Greetings, this is Her Royal Majesty, Queen Mother, Dr. Dorothy Desir of Ouida. As we near the close of 2021, the patience of Africans and African descendants communities has begun to pay off a little bit. The repatriation of African cultural patrimony to African soil has begun. Benin Republic, formerly known as the Kingdom of Dahomey, was among the countries who received historic works back from France. And on the 11th of November, 2021, we in Benin celebrated something we should not have been celebrating to begin with, and that is the return of 26 stolen objects from the Abomey Kingdom, such as the throne of King Gesu. And these items reflect our collective spiritual and political patrimony. Now, the list of items returned is known, but what is not known as well is what was not returned. And among the items that France and the Musee Quai Branly, Jacques Chirac, chose not to return was a divination tray, an oracle, as well as the statue of a voodoo or loi representing Gu or Gun. This is very revealing. Why? Because the oracle, better known as the Fa divination board, represents and speaks to the nature of governance and management of power. And Gu, or Gun, the quintessential warrior who embodies the realization of justice, are still being held on to. Now, it seems that the former colonizing state recognizes the potency of the systems of thought and logics of indigenous African philosophies, which frame our sacred knowledges. Yet France isn't quite ready to allow this sacred African state and sovereign African state to assume full control of its own destiny. In the meantime, that the descendants of the looters of African works of art and cultural artifacts continue to debate whether or not Africans have the right to have the works of their forefathers, of our forefathers, work that they created for their African benefactors, work that was created for their ancestors before them, work that was created for their African gods, work that was created for us, we, their progeny. Questioning that, questioning our capacity to take care of these items, isn't an abomination against justice? That this debate continues in the institutions of our historic oppressors serves as justification for the continued violation of what constitutes our humanity. The assumption that we as Africans and African descendants have no history, neither have a sense of the creativity of our ancestors, nor value their ingenuity, informs this troubling disposition. With the exodus of objects, however, comes the exodus of its heirs. And the lack of consideration of how being deprived of our sense of self continues to harm us and actually adversely affects the very communities responsible for the pillaging of our cultural patrimony and those who continue to profit from its plunder, is directly linked to the droit de retour. The droit de retour, the right of return, the right to return to the African continent as African descendants and to claim our spaces of origins, is more than a matter of what former colonial states think is reasonable or permissible, but it is also a matter of how the Republic of Benin acts legislatively and is a matter of that state's social responsibility towards the African diaspora. Our physical beings and political personhood, as it relates to our psychic, moral, intellectual, and spiritual well-being, remains at stake. We as Pan-Africanists and members of the family of Benin Republic, we, the children, the descendants of the Kingdom of Dahomey, We're excited about seeing the works of art returned and being on exhibit, first in the city of Ouida, and then in the new museum that is being built for these returned objects. That new museum will be constructed in Abomey. We're thrilled about that. But let us understand that reparatory justice takes on many forms. And we as Africans, African descendants, as well as indigenous people, and friends of the continent, must demand and continue to demand the return of all of our cultural artifacts, and in some instances, human remains. And it has to be done on our terms. It has to be on our terms to their sources of origin. The conditions of return, just as the recognition of our human, cultural, and economic rights, should not be defined by those persons responsible for and or benefiting from the illegal removal of material culture and those who were marauders of our lands and our forebears. It's us. It's up to us. It's our decisions. It's our input that is required here. Now, let's take note that as we receive these precious gifts of our ancestors, we need more African cultural specialists taking care of our objects, designing, building, and leading the institutions that will house these items. We must also insist on the right to return to our motherland in a manner that is inclusive, where we, as people from the diaspora, can serve as active agents of change, that we are seen as the providers of more resources, that we are also perceived, because we are in fact the harbingers of additional knowledge and expertise, that we are ready and able to use towards making sustainable contributions to those societies that we historically call home. Aibobo Anache.